Right here is an RX-9 Ultra that has absolutely been through it all. I didn't want to use this time to give you an impression and a review of a model where everything looks pristine. I wanted to show you my bow that for the past 5 months have gone all through Canada, through the Rockies in the west, across the sea over to Zambia, and then back here to the tree stands in the Midwest. Over the 5 months that I've had this thing, completely stock, factory strings and cables right out of the box. This is how it sits right now, and I couldn't be more impressed. Now there's going to be some awesome models for 2025 from Hoyt, but I wanted to focus on the RX-9 Ultra and give you a fair comparison between this and some of the experiences that I had with that RX-8 Ultra and tell you why this upgrade is actually better than what you're going to see at first appearance. We really wanted to focus on 5 new things with this bow. We wanted to focus on the speed, the aim, the draw, the feel, and then the dependability of this bow to round that off to give you and me, the consumer, an overall better experience and better performance with this new series. Now the first thing, the speed column, you are going to be so impressed with the difference between the RX-9 Ultra and the RX-8 Ultra. Listen to these numbers. At 30 inches, an 8 foot per second speed jump, 19 feet per second at 29 inches, 18 feet per second at 28.5 inches, and 16 feet per second difference over that RX-8 Ultra at 28 inches. 16 feet per second, and this is awesome for all of you that are not long draw archers like me, but you're in that average draw length setting. And this comes from several different features of the RX-9 Ultra. But first, let's talk about the speed that we're getting from these bows and the fact that these speeds are real world speeds. And this is something I've talked about before. And as consumers, we're not getting a fair crack at what bows actually do for performance because there's so many variables in how you can advertise your speed ratings. Now, some companies will go to the maximum poundage that's allowed to be advertised and then use that plus or minus variable to their favor to where they might go out and test an 83 pound bow that even though they're saying it's a 30-inch draw, they're drawing it to the max plus minus allowance and getting almost 31 inches out of that bow and then shooting it again over that 80 pound mark, which isn't giving us the consumers real speed numbers. I've always loved that Hoyt sticks to the ATA guidelines and they really stick to that 30-inch, 70 pound, 350 grain arrow to where we know the draw length, the arrow weight, and the max poundage are precise and we're getting real world numbers. But how are we getting those numbers? A lot of this is coming from the new HBX Gen 4 cam system. This thing is awesome and it now has 5 modules that focus on those draw lengths within this cam's draw length spectrum to where now we're maximizing what the speed and the feel and the draw curve is for each of those 1-inch increments. So the largest module of 5, which I have, will be a max draw of 31 inches, but it'll also let me go in those 1/4 inch adjustments down to 30 1/4. So I can have those 1/4 inch adjustments, but this module is focusing on that 30 1/4 to the 31 inch setting. The same's true for the 29 to 30, same's true for 28 to 29. This is important because that's how we're getting those speed jumps because they're able to tailor that module for that draw length so that you're not sacrificing either the performance or the feel or the draw cycle of that cam in that draw setting. The other thing I've loved about the HBX series are two things. One is the foot for your let off. The let off is still anywhere from 75 to 85% let off, but you can also flip this foot to where you have either a hard or the super hard back wall. And all you have to do by that is, if this module is closest to the axle, you're gonna have the hard wall. If you take these off and flip them to where they point away from the axle, you're gonna have that super hard feel, which a lot of people that are target archers switching over to the hunting setups really like. I've actually really preferred just being on the hard setting with it closest to the cam. And the other thing that's been amazing is this little kicker right here with the rubber around it to where you can set your bow down and protect that cam. This pairs awesome with the Ghost Sticks 2.0. The HBX 4 cam system is giving you the speeds at the average archer that you have always wanted, and we've seen these huge bumps in speeds because of this newly refined cam. In addition to the HBX Gen 4 cam, there's also going to be a new SD short draw cam, which is absolutely perfect for Sharon, and it's perfect for any of you shorter draws. Now, on a regular RX9, for example, that cam system goes from 23 to 27 inches. And also you can now get limbs that go as low as 30 pounds for these flagship models with a 40-pound max. This is absolutely perfect for any of the short draw or lower poundage draw shooters that are wanting one of these flagship bows. And that module is adjustable through that entire range from 23 to 27 inches, giving that archer a great feel at all of those settings. The next thing that I want to talk about is the axle to axle length and the brace height and how these translate into the aim and how this thing points on target and stays on target. Now, we focused on a few things this year. Focused on that optimized geometry, the natural point of aim when you draw back and point that thing at the target for the first time, but also minimizing that bow alignment or that torque and that rotational translation, which seems like a complicated word, but what it really means is it talks about how us as an archer being in a position where we're drawing through one motion, meanwhile these cams are pivoting on a center axis and going into a different direction. So that rotational translation factors into our bow being on target, but also staying on target. So the axle to axle lengths are actually not a true representation of how that bow feels or points at a target. A lot of people are under the impression that you have to have a long axle to axle length in order to have a forgiving setup, but those numbers aren't always 100% accurate, because when you focus on having the cam in the perfect position where the string is leaving that cam and then creating that triangle that a shooter has with the string at full draw, it gives you a more favorable string angle and it opens it up. And in many cases, it gives you a feel of a bow that's 2 inches longer axle to axle and a peep to eye relief that is also favorable to that. Now this year, on the new AX2 bow, the aluminum flagship bow comes in a 29-inch axle to axle. Now historically, that's only the second time that Hoyt has gone under that 30-inch axle to axle length. And because most of their engineers are target archers as their DNA and their passion in their free time, they haven't wanted to go with a real short axle to axle bow that loses forgiveness in that shorter axle to axle length. Now the AX229 actually has a string angle and a feel of a 31 and a 16th inch model that had a different type of cam to axle position. So you're getting the feel of a bow that's over 2 inches longer in axle to axle length, even though it's a short axle to axle bow. Now that gives us even better numbers if we're in this Ultra series like I am personally. So this gives me the feel of a bow that is 35 inches, which puts me a lot closer to the bows that I would have shot during 3D season. For 2025, Hoyt's definitely mastered the secret of smooth, and they want to continue to ride on that fact that 70 pounds has never pulled so easy. And that's important because having a bow that, even though it's 70 pounds, is pulling like a bow that's in the 60s is incredible, because it gives the hunter the ability to draw smoother and go undetected. It also gives you the ability to put in more reps on the range and get in more practice and shoot more comfortably. Or if you need it, you're able to use more poundage without having to put in that extra effort. This year, that secret of smooth, it actually comes from a magnitude of different upgrades and changes to the 2025 lineup. Now with this RX9 Ultra, there's a new pocket, there's a new limb, and there's a new split harness system here on the HBX Gen 4 cam system. And this is important that all of these things factor in, because we're also now giving the shops or you the ability to use the new bushing and axle system to shift this cam so that you can actually get the perfect alignment and tune that you want based on your shooting style and your shooting form or technique. Because how you put your hand into this grip and the dynamics of how you draw the bow all start to factor into several things, and one of which is that lateral knock travel. And you really want that lateral knock travel to remain consistent. You don't want to be having to draw out here in this whole system torquing as you're going through your natural draw cycle and as these cams are pivoting around the axle. Hoyt has some incredible numbers this year when it comes to measuring the reduction in torque. So there's a 38% reduction in torque of the RX9 Ultra just compared to an Alpha X last year or the RX8. 38%. Now here's what's incredible. When measuring torque on some competitors' bows, we're looking at an 82% reduction in that torque that is in the system. And again, this comes from several things, but having the ability to adjust that cam position and also having a limb and pocket connection and combination that coincides with this cam and where it's been presented in the limbs and where your hand is positioned in this grip is absolutely key. One of the things that Hoyt has always had over their competitors is this tech riser, which this bridge and adding this strength right here behind the pivot point of the bow allows them to have much more options for where they put this grip, left to right, to maintain the strength needed, but also how thin that grip can get to where when your hand goes into this position and rests, it's in a torque-free position and your pins are able to still stay in line with that arrow shaft. Now looking at my setup here, when I put my arrow on this bow and I look at it from over the top like this, my arrow shaft, tiller bolt, and my pin are all in perfect line with this new system, and I've never had a better tune from a bow out of the box and a draw cycle that is as forgiving and friendly to shoot as it has been on this RX-9 Ultra. For 2025, Hoyt has cut some weight out of their setups, and the weight can vary depending on the model that you're comparing it to. But on a lot of these, you're looking at an average of like 0.4 tenths of a pound, which is awesome because it gives you the ability to add your go sticks, have a fuller quiver, or put on your own stabilizer as well and still be in that weight or overall weight that's friendly for you as a hunter, or be able to give you the options to fully balance as a target archer as well. Now, what I love about Hoyt's system is that they actually have the perfect combination down low right here with the Go Sticks 2.0 and the new Shortstop 2.0. This is awesome, and honestly what this has allowed me to do is I still prefer to keep my traditional stabilizer where it is so that when I set my bow down this way, I'm able to protect my sight and my pins from getting in the ground and in the mud and crud. But it's also allowed me to take my weight off my upper stabilizer and reposition that to a lower stabilizer. So this has helped in my aim ability, but also in how this bow feels. And because the overall weights this year is lighter, it's given you the option to balance this thing exactly how you want it. Hoyts are second to none when it comes to reliability and dependability and just what these things can go through in the field. This has been through it all. Thousands of miles in a truck, thousands of miles on the gravel, thousands of miles on an airplane, and who knows how many miles in my hand toting this thing around. And I absolutely depend on Hoyt's durability. And this is something I've said from the beginning when people ask me, what's the biggest separation in all of these premier brand bows? And I just say, well, when it comes to Hoyt, I can tell you that is my most dependable bow I've ever had. They're so robust, and the standards that they have as an engineering team for 1,500 dry fires. So if an engineer comes and says, hey guys, I got this brand new RX-9 Ultra, check it out, they've got to then put it in that dry fire machine, and this riser has to be able to sustain 1,500 dry fires. They'll go through some string and cable replacements, but honestly, this thing has to be able to manage that type of destruction. And I just really appreciate the robustness of the cam and the ability to set it down and not flatten that thing out, and the ability to have the cam tracks wider and more robust to where as you bang this thing around the wilderness, which you naturally will, and mine has dings and pings all over, but my string and my cable are still safely in those tracks. This thing is absolutely bulletproof, and that's one of the most important things when you're factoring in a hunting bow in real world vigorous conditions is, can it stand up to those conditions? And this bow has been 5 months of constant abuse, and I am still able to put arrows exactly where they were when I first put this sight tape on in August. Last but not least is just your overall experience as a consumer. And this year, when I got my very first prototype, I wanted to act the same as you out there that's a consumer and getting a bow for the first time, and you don't have the ability to sit there and work on it throughout the entire year. This bow has been from stock to NOCK, and it has stayed that way throughout this entire season, and a magnitude of different hunting elements, as well as some very vigorous training throughout the summer here in the backyard, which I think a lot of you followed me along with. I want to talk about that importance because this is the first time that I've actually used a set of strings and cables stock out of the box and did not even replace the center serving. This is still my original well, it's actually not my original D-loop, but this is my original set of knocking points, my original peep position, and my original peep tie, and also my original cable positions for my cam synchronization or my cam timing. These have been absolutely awesome, and this is important because a lot of you out there will recognize when a factory set in strings and cables is not giving you the longevity or the reliability that you want, so you replace them. And what's really important about that is you have to understand when you replace strings and cables, the diameter or the material makeup or the type of material will start to factor into the tune of that bow. And the Hoyt engineers absolutely create their strings and cables around the natural types of dynamics and rollovers that their cam system is producing. And they produce a string that matches all of those different parts of physics. This has been an amazing year with the new Wireworks and how this thing is held up to tune. And the other thing that I've really liked this year is with the inline system, so being able to mount my sight directly to the front Picatinny mount, be able to have a direct mount for my rest right here in the back, and then look at this. By not having that, I'm able to get my quiver inside of that limb and be in a position where as that travels, I still have clearance on top and bottom, and I have a system that is extremely in line and extremely balanced, preventing me from having to put a side rod on there so that I'm able to have that levitability that I want in my setups. This has been so impressive, and trust me when I say I don't want to just have another bow review where I show you exactly what you can see in the catalog. I wanted to be able to show you this thing that I've taken through every bit of ups and downs through an entire hunting season, and it has been 100% on tags, and it's been 100% on dependability, and this thing has really done it all. I loved the RX-8, and I thought it was gonna be tough to beat that, but after experiencing the RX-9 Ultra and looking at all of these details that went into the design, I'm definitely sold on this bow, and I'm here to tell you, if you like those other models from Hoyt, 2025 really has made some awesome upgrades. And if you want a more in-depth vibe on all of the different types of engineering thoughts that go into a Hoyt system, I would recommend you check out Knock On's podcast that I'm going to do with Brian Gold, who is a superstar engineer, but can also get even deeper into the details of what is making Hoyt the most durable and consumer-friendly bow model on the market.